So today we're diving into a project with a name that's, well, it's part warning, part mission statement. No water, no world. This is the story of how one classroom decided to take on one of the biggest challenges on our planet, and it really goes to show that massive change can start pretty small.
And it all boils down to this one question, right? How in the world can a group of students, from right there inside their classroom, even start to tackle something as huge as the global water crisis? Well, as it turns out, it begins with a surprisingly solid plan.
You see, this wasn't treated like just another school assignment, not at all. Right from the get-go, the teachers framed this as a genuine mission, a real adventure that was going to go from just understanding the problem to actually taking action in the real world.
What's really striking here is just how professional they were from day one. I mean, before they even got into the water crisis itself, they built this incredible foundation. They set up clear communication, they defined the rules of the project, things like copyright, and maybe most importantly, they got everyone trained up on the right tools. And we're not just talking about standard software. They got hands-on with Web 2.0 and 3.0 tools, and even started exploring how AI could help them. They were basically equipping themselves like a modern research team.
Okay, so the team was assembled, the tools were ready. It was time to turn their focus to the heart of the matter, the water crisis itself.
The first 3 months were pretty much a boot camp. September was all about getting the team together. October was for mastering the technology. And that led them to November, where they just plunged right into the deep end, dedicating the whole month to really understanding the sheer global scale of the problem. And to make a global problem feel personal, they didn't kick things off with a textbook. Nope, they started with a story. They watched a documentary called 25 Leaders, and this one film, it was the catalyst. It sparked all these crucial debates and discussions that turned abstract numbers into something real, something urgent. And they were looking at this from every angle. They grounded their work in the UN's global goals for clean water, they dug into its deep connections with the climate crisis, and they even got creative, writing these collaborative stories inspired by simple, everyday objects related to water. They were building a complete 360-degree view of the whole issue. But here's where the project took a really brilliant turn. After getting their heads around the massive global scale, they zoomed right in, from the entire planet to their own backyards. They started looking at practical, local solutions. One of the first things they tackled was this idea of rainwater harvesting, which is really just a simple but super powerful idea about saving what falls from the sky instead of just letting it all wash away. To really get the local picture, they had to answer a fundamental question. Where does our water actually go? So they dug into how much is used by homes, by farms, by industry. And this is such a critical step, visualizing the data, turning these abstract numbers into something clear and undeniable. It makes an invisible problem suddenly very, very visible. But they knew that charts and data only tell you part of the story. To get the real story, you have to talk to people, right? So they went out into their community, interviewing their own families and neighbors, and gathering those essential first-hand accounts of how people use water, how they conserve it, and what they're worried about. So now they were armed with global data and local stories. And this is where the project enters its most exciting phase. How could they share everything they'd learned in a way that would make people not just listen, but actually feel it? Well, they unleashed this incredible wave of creativity to turn their research into art. They designed a collaborative calendar, they created these powerful visuals of cities through which water flows, and they built detailed concept maps to help boost water literacy. But one of the most inventive things they did, they made silent films. They understood that emotion drives action way more than data alone. So they took these timeless proverbs about water, pieces of ancient wisdom, and brought them to life with silent films. The thinking behind it is simple. A story can connect with you on an emotional level that a dry fact sheet just never could. And this brings us to the final act of their mission. They had gathered all this knowledge, they had translated it into art, and now it was time to share it with the world, or at least their part of it. The transformation in their own understanding was just incredible. You can see the tangible result of their journey right here. They started with a pretty basic vocabulary, river, ocean, rain. They finished with this sophisticated glossary filled with terms like aqueduct, cistern, and big ideas like water literacy. They weren't just students anymore. They were becoming genuine experts. So for their grand finale, the project came full circle. They actually collaborated with official local water management agencies to create and distribute posters. And just like that, they transformed their classroom project into a real public awareness campaign, getting their message out to the entire community. And that leaves us with this final critical question. This remarkable project shows how a group of students can investigate, understand, and tell the water story of their own town. So, the question for all of us is, what's the story of ours?